All right, so welcome to Entering the Talmud, a textual deep dive into the Sea of Talmud. And it's called the Sea of Talmud in the words of the Jewish sages. That's kind of like a term they coined for it because of its vastness in size and in depth. Whichever direction you want to go, there's a long way to go. Whether you start from the beginning of the Talmud, many people have the custom of studying one page a day. And if you're studying one page a day, you're going for breadth, not necessarily depth, because it takes a lot of time to study one page of Talmud deeply. But some people do that. They cover one page a day, and it takes 7 years to complete the Talmud if you study one page every single day. So that's just to give you a picture of the size of the Talmud. And just to give you a picture of the depth of the Talmud, in yeshiva, we study the Torah both in depth and to cover ground. It's two different classes. And when you're studying the Talmud in depth, it's about 4 to 5 hours in the morning, 6 days a week. And we'd spend oftentimes on a single page of Talmud a couple of months, going all the way from the background, the biblical verses that are the foundation for the Mishnah, studying the Mishnah in depth, and then each piece of Talmud, every couple lines contains like a mini segment, a sugya, as it's called, and studying that with the commentaries will take a few days. And then when you go deeper and deeper into the medieval commentaries and then later commentaries and then contemporary commentaries, you can spend weeks and months on a very small portion, but really pulling it apart and getting it from all the different angles and applying it to a variety of practical case scenarios that we encounter in our day-to-day lives. So I think it's appropriate that the Talmud is the sea of Talmud. You can travel for days and days, or you can dive into the depths. And we're going to try to strike a balance here. We're going to be in the text. We're going to start off on the page. When I say on the page, it includes both the Mishnah and Gemara, Rashi, which gives us basic understanding of it, and the Tosfot, which we discussed in the intro class. The Tosfot are Rashi's grandchildren, many different scholars who compiled this commentary, which kind of compares and contrasts the page of Talmud that we're going to be studying with other sources in the Talmud which discuss the same topics and discusses some marginal issues that Rashi maybe didn't deem necessary to address, but they're addressed there as well. And as time permits, we'll try to go deeper. And that's a process that'll involve not just me, but you as well. As questions come up in your mind around the significance of one commentary or application of something that we've studied to another case scenario that you think of, we'll get into it, as they say, and try to go a little bit deeper as well. So I'm excited that you're all here. This is going to be good. And the portion that we're studying, let me just share it up on the screen now. This is, hang on. All right. Share screen. Okay, does everyone see the textbook? Just give me a shake of the head, a wave, if you do see the, okay, so we're looking at the textbook now, Entering the Talmud, a textual deep dive into the Sea of Talmud. And right here on the first page, I put the page of the Talmud in the classic Vilna printing. Like I mentioned, there are tools out there for you to study Talmud on your own that will include this page and a page of translation and further commentaries, such as the Koren Talmud from Rabbi Steinsaltz or the Art Scroll Talmud. Those are some great tools that you can, I know some people in the class have mentioned that they've already purchased certain volumes of the Talmud so that they can study on their own. We're looking at the original right here. And we'll read it from this page, but in addition to that, at the end of the book, we have on page number 5 and 6, we have the translation of the portion of the Gemara that we're going to be reading today, but that's just the actual text of the Mishnah and the Gemara without any of the commentaries. So, we're studying from the same tractate that we studied the intro course. It's called Bava Metzia, the middle gate of the section of the Talmud that deals with civil litigation. And the chapter that we're studying is the 3rd chapter. Great place to start. It's actually the place where customarily people begin studying the Talmud in depth. When I studied Talmud for the first time in the 5th grade, this is where we started. And when researching online every possible beginner course in the Talmud that I could find, this is the place where we start. And I think it's appropriate because it has that balance between engaging with the Talmud on the Talmud's terms, but also being digestible. There is a great flow that I think we should be able to follow in the back and forth and the questions and answers and proofs and all the good stuff that is to come later. And the case scenario that we're dealing with here is of what is called a guardian. Okay, when one person has the possession of another person in their property for safeguarding. Okay, and we'll discuss various possible scenarios where someone else's property will be in my possession, all legally, of course, right? We're talking about where it was deposited with him for safekeeping and maintenance for whatever reason. And there are various laws that apply to a case scenario where that object that was deposited for safekeeping is either destroyed, lost, stolen, or otherwise unaccounted for. Okay, who pays? Does the guardian is the guardian responsible to pay for it? When is the guardian responsible to pay for it? What kind of guardian is responsible to pay for it? These are all issues that we will be touching on. So I think before we get to the actual Mishnah, let's give a little bit of background about the various kinds of guardians and the laws that apply to them. So that's what we have on page number 3. The biblical source for what we'll call the 4 watchmen, or the 4 guardians. There's 4 general categories of guardians that are described in the Talmud. And we'll read it from the original, 4 guardians that are described in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses. And it's a portion in Exodus chapter 22, verses 6 through 13. And we'll read these verses from the Torah, and we'll try to see if we can discern the various differences between each clause in the Torah. And obviously, when you read in the Torah, it's just a block of script. There are no clauses, and there's no designation that, we're starting a new topic here. It reads like, one flow that seems to be talking about one topic. But if we look closely, we can see that the Torah is actually discussing various different types of guardians or watchmen. So let's start with verse number 6. Ki yitain ish el re'ehu, when a man gives his neighbor, or if a man gives his neighbor, kesef o kelim lishmar, money or articles for safekeeping. V'gunav mibeis ha'ish, and it is stolen from the man's house. Im yimatze haganav yishalem shnayim. So if it's stolen from the guardian's house, the first thing the Torah tells us, if we find the thief is responsible to pay the principal times 2. Now that's a concept that is discussed elsewhere in the Torah. That's the law with regard to a thief. A man goes into his friend's house, steals a watch that is worth $200, and is discovered to be the thief. An important point that's going to come up later is it's discovered that he's the thief. He doesn't come and admit it on his own. So if he comes and admits that he is the thief, he needs to pay back give back the watch, or if he had sold the watch already, pay back the principal. If he denies being the thief and it's discovered that in fact he had stolen it, either because it's found in his possession or there are witnesses to the theft, the rule is that the thief needs to pay the principal times 2. Okay, that's a penalty for stealing. Pretty standard. So in this case, where the thief stole it from the guardian, he needs to pay back double to the owner of the article that was deposited for safekeeping. Im lo yimatze haganov. This is verse number 7. If the thief is not found, okay, so who is going to pay for the watch? V'nikrav bal habayis el ha'elohim, and the homeowner shall approach the judges, meaning the owner of the watch. Sorry, the homeowner being the guardian. Im lo shalach yadav b'mlachas re'ehu, he needs to swear that he has not laid his hand upon his neighbor's property. Because when an object is deposited in your possession for safekeeping, that does not give you the right to, let's take the example of the watch. It's going, let's go with it. It doesn't give you the right to wear the watch. So as long as he had not used the watch for his own use, that oath is enough. He takes the oath that he didn't touch it, and he is not liable to pay for the watch that was stolen from his possession. Verse number 8, al kol dvar pesha, for any sinful word, al shor, al chamar, for a bull or a donkey, al seh, al salma, for a lamb or for a garment, al kol aveda, for any lost article, asher yomar ki hu zeh, concerning which he will say that this is it. Ad halehim yoved dvar shneim, to the courts, to the judges shall the word of both of them come. Asher yashinu lehim yishalim shnaim l're'ehu. If the judges declare someone guilty of thievery, he pays twofold to the neighbor. Full stop. Okay. In the Mishnah, these 3 verses are designated as the source for the first type of guardian, the first type of watchman. And what we see here is, number 1, he's given something for safekeeping. Number 2, he's not allowed to use what has been entrusted to him for safekeeping. Number 3, if it's stolen from his possession, he is not liable to pay for it. All he needs to do is take an oath. Okay? That's category number 1. And what this category is what's called an unpaid watchman, where the item is deposited in his possession for safekeeping, but he doesn't receive restitution for watching over it. So in that case, the bar for his responsibility is set really low. He's really only going to be responsible, as we'll see soon from the Mishnah, he's only going to be responsible for negligence, right? In essence, you come to me, I'm the watchman, I do you a favor, right? You say, please wash my watch for me. See what happened there? Maybe watch wasn't the best example, case scenario to go with. He says, you ask me, please watch my watch for me, keep it safe. I say, okay, but you're not paying me or anything. So my responsibility to you is just to do the best I can. a theft occurred, someone came into my house and stole the watch, sorry, you're lost, right? If I was negligent, that means, my contract with you, the unspoken contract that I'm going to safeguard this, I violated that. So in the case of negligence, I would be responsible, but anything, better than negligence, I did my job, your loss. Let's look on to the next category of guardian that we have here. You'll see the initial verse looks very, very similar, but the mishap, right? What happened to the object entrusted for safekeeping is a little bit different. Verse number 9. Ki yitin ish el re'ehu. If a man gives his neighbor chamaros, oshar or oseh, a donkey or an ox, a bull or a lamb, v'chol behema lishmar, or any type of animal for safekeeping, umes, and it dies, o nishbar, or it breaks a limb, o nishba, or it is captured, ein raya, and no one sees it. So in this case, he was guarding it, but something happened that was, beyond something that he could necessarily guard against, right? Animals tend to die. Animals break a limb, right? Barring, as long as it wasn't negligence that caused it to break a limb, or it's captured. This is something that different than theft. We're talking about forcible seizure, captured by an invading army that needed to feed their troops, or captured, confiscated by the government for whatever reason. Something that we take for granted, but we take for granted that this doesn't happen. But in biblical and definitely Talmudic times, these things were a lot more common. So in this case, he needs to take an oath. Let's look at verse number 10. Shavuas Hashem tia bein shnehem. An oath of the Lord shall be between the two of them. Im lo shalach yada b'mleches re'ehu v'lakach be'olav v'lo yishalem. He takes an oath that he did not lay his hand upon his neighbor's property, and the owner needs to accept that. So long as, number one, he was not negligent, and number two, he did not use the property that was entrusted with him, as we said before, that's not allowed. The owner takes that as payment and nothing else, right? He doesn't have to make restitution for, this animal or object that was entrusted for safekeeping. Verse number 11, V'im ganav yiganev mi'imai, if it is stolen from him, yishalem liba'alav, he shall pay its owner. So here's where we see the differentiation. The major differentiation between this and the first type of guardian is that this type of guardian is liable to pay if it is stolen from him. 12, Im taref yitaref, if it is torn apart, yivi'eu ed atref v'lo yishalem, he shall bring witnesses for it, and he doesn't need to pay for the trefa. So the trefa is, you put the animal out to pasture, and a wild animal comes by and kills this animal that was entrusted for safekeeping. Again, that's not in the category of negligence. You were doing your best to safeguard it, and something beyond your control happened. This parallels is very similar to the various case scenarios in verse number 9. We're talking about you did your best to safeguard this object, this animal, and something happened kind of beyond your control. So this category here, the second category, is what's described in the Mishna, the oral tradition, as a paid watchman. So when someone comes to his neighbor and says, "Here, watch my animal for me, and I'll pay you, $100 a day to watch it." So now you're accepting a fee for for the safekeeping of this animal or object, and the bar for your liability rises a little bit, right? Your responsibility to exert yourself for the protection of this animal or object, your responsibility goes up. So in this case of the paid watchman, he's responsible not only for a case of negligence, he's also responsible to pay if it is stolen or lost or otherwise unaccounted for. However, he does not have the, taking a fee to safeguard it. Number one, doesn't allow him to use it while it's in his care for safekeeping, and it also does the fact that he takes a fee does not make it necessary to pay restitution when something happens that was beyond his control. Okay, is that clear? So far we have two types of guardians: the unpaid watchman and the paid watchman. The unpaid watchman is responsible only for cases of negligence. The paid watchman is responsible for cases of negligence and theft, right, when it's stolen from his possession. And then the last two verses are very, very, very short, but they describe the next two types of guardians. Two other instances where someone else's property will be in your possession for safekeeping. Verse number 13: if a person borrows an animal from his neighbor and it breaks a limb or dies, he shall surely pay. So when you borrowing is the most extreme other end of the spectrum, where not only are you not sorry, it's the other extreme of the spectrum because you have the ability to use it, right? When it comes into your possession, it's given, the contract, the unspoken or unwritten contract is when you're borrowing something, you are allowed to use it. So you're actually benefiting from it being in your possession for safekeeping. Well, if you're receiving benefit from it being in your care for safekeeping, so much benefit that you're able to use it while it's in your care. So then you're responsible for anything that happens to this animal. Even if it breaks a limb or dies, meaning things that are beyond your control, right? It's not negligence. It's not even theft, but it's something that you really didn't prevent. The fact that you are using it while it's in your possession means that if it breaks a limb or dies, you need to pay. Im balav imoy lo yishalem im sachir hu ba b'scharei. Verse number 14 describes the fourth type of watchman where you rented it. So you do have the ability to use the animal, but you pay for the privilege of using this animal. You hired it. So in that case, the laws will be much more similar to a paid watchman, where it's in your possession for safekeeping because you paid the owner to be able to use it. So because you paid the owner, the bar goes back down a little bit. You're not responsible for cases where it breaks a limb or dies, etc. So these are the biblical verses that kind of lay the groundwork, the foundation for all of the laws that we're going to be studying throughout this chapter. And let's break it down a little bit. You have here mostly for the review, but what I'm going to use here is the terms that we're going to use. Again, like we just mentioned, the four types of guardians: unpaid guardian, number 2, the paid guardian, 3 is the renter, and 4 is the borrower. And these are called respectively shomer. Shomer means a guardian. Shomer chinam means the free guardian, the unpaid guardian. Shomer sachar means the paid guardian or the rented guardian. And those constitute kind of one subset where their job is to guard it, not to use it at all. The next two are people who will both be using the object that is in their possession for safekeeping. In one case, you have the socher, which is a renter, right? So he paid for the right to use it. And the shoel, the borrower, is the one who didn't pay. So you see how they're kind of like the flip side of each other. And there are three general categories of what might happen to this object that is in the possession of the guardian, right? You have negligence, you leave the object unsecure, exposed to the elements, you leave the animal, out to pasture where there's no gate or something like that, and it's stolen or lost. So you didn't do your job, right? Whether you borrowed it, rented it, or you were, watching it for free or being paid to watch it, you're going to be liable to pay, right? That's negligence, and you see that here in the table right across the top. Negligence, no matter what kind of guardian you are, you're going to be liable for it. What about a preventable accident, such as theft, right? You secured it in the safe and it's stolen or it's lost, right? You had the animal in the barn, you had the barn locked tight, and this animal was really wanted to get out and burrowed out, right? So you did the best you can. Is the best you can enough is really the question when it comes to an object that is lost in a kind of preventable scenario, right? And theft is also something that is technically preventable. You can always secure it better. So in this case, we have the unpaid watchman, right? We mentioned earlier that the unpaid watchman would be exempt for theft, right? If someone came into his property and stole it, he wouldn't have to pay. Everybody else is going to have to pay, okay? The paid watchman, because if you're being paid to watch it, you got to do your best. You got to raise the bar for how you guard this animal or guard this, valuable object. The renter is going to always fall in line with the paid watchman, right? Because you have the ability to use it, right? So again, you raise the bar. You are receiving benefit, so you're liable for preventable accidents, and of course, the borrower is always going to be liable. What about an accident where it's beyond human control, such as an animal dies, a car breaks down, or an invading army comes and takes it, seizes it from you, where there's nothing in the world that you can do to stop them. So in that case, the unpaid watchman, the paid watchman, and the renter are all going to be exempt, but the borrower is still going to be liable. So that's the summary of the laws of the four guardians. And then here we have a couple of other important points to mention. And this is the oath, right? The Torah, in the verses that we just read, mentions an oath. Shavuas Hashem, an oath of God shall be between the two of them. What is this oath? Why does he need to swear? Well, put yourself in the judge's shoes, right? Because that's what the Talmud is. A lot of the discussion in the Talmud is legal discussion. So really, what we're talking about here is not what happened, but when they come to court, right? So I come to court because this watch was entrusted into my possession for safekeeping, and the watch is stolen, right? It was stolen. So I don't have any witnesses to prove that it was stolen, right? Nobody saw the theft. And usually witnesses are the main way that I would back up a claim, especially a claim that's going to exempt me from paying. Right? We're talking about, a watch over here. A watch can be very expensive. So when the person who entrusted this watch in my possession brings me to court, he's bringing me to court because he wants to receive restitution for his watch, right? So we both show up in court. He says, I gave him the watch to take care of, and I came back to pick it up, and it's gone, right? And I say, listen, I had it in the safe, and it was stolen. There's nothing I could do about it. And the judges ask, they say, well, what kind of watchman are you, right? Were you paid to hold the watch for this time? And I say, no, I wasn't paid. I was doing him a favor. So they say, well, if he was doing you a favor and the watch was stolen from his possession, the law is that he's not liable to pay. But they say, Sruli, were you Do you have witnesses or any way to prove that it was stolen? Right? Because we have a couple of issues at play here. Number one, just I'm getting off the hook for an expensive watch. There needs to be something to attest to the truth of my claim. So the oath, number one, serves as that attestation that what I'm saying is indeed true. And then there's another thing at play here, which is, did I wear the watch? Right? The watch being entrusted in my possession does not allow me to wear the watch. Maybe I wore the watch out for a night on the town and was flashing it all around, and somebody saw it and was like, ah, that's a nice watch. Followed me home, and I, maybe inadvertently caused the theft. Right? Regardless of that hypothetical, when I use the watch for my own benefit and it was entrusted into my possession for safekeeping, what that makes me is a thief. Right? Using an object that does not belong to you, that you don't have the permission to use, is misappropriation. So I misappropriated an object for my own benefit. So that would make me a thief. And guess what? If you steal something from somebody else and something happens to it while it's in your possession, you need to pay no matter what happens. So if I use the watch, I'm no longer an unpaid watchman. I'm no longer exempt from payment. Okay? Bear with me. It's a little Talmudic here. So I start on Monday. I was an unpaid watchman. On Tuesday, I wore the watch. Now I'm a thief. Okay. Now I'm liable for anything that happens to it. So, and I locked it away in the safe that night. Doesn't exempt me from paying for it if I used it previously. So when the guardian takes the oath that it was stolen from his possession, they likewise swear that I never used it. I only took it out of the safe to wind it and to keep it well oiled. But aside from that, I never used it for my own benefit. I only ever touched it for the benefit of the object itself, for its maintenance and safekeeping. And then the rabbis instituted an additional oath because of their keen attunement to human nature, which is an oath attesting that I don't still have the object, because they understood that human beings are human beings, and they see something that they may covet, desire, right? They want it for themselves, and it's not on the market. I can't buy it. So this is an oath whether the guardian is exempt from pay or opts to pay and say, I was negligent with it and it got lost or stolen. So they pay for the value of, let's say the watch in this case. They need to take an oath that it's not still in their safe somewhere, right? Because that would be a very good way to surreptitiously acquire the property of somebody else, saying, hey, you know what? Can I rent that for a week? And then coming to court and saying, hey, it got stolen, right? So in court, either you're not liable to pay or you need to pay, but you're keeping the object in a shed at home for your own use later on. And obviously that is not something that we want to enable. So the rabbis instituted this additional oath, basically swearing that I don't still have the object, right? My claim is true and it's not in my possession. And here are some additional terms to remember. Pikadon. A pikadon means a entrusted object, right? The subject here. I keep using the example of a watch, but it could be anything. It could be a piece of clothing. It could be a piece of jewelry. It could be a piece of furniture, or a tool, an animal. That comes up a lot. Very common in those days. So any type of object that's deposited for safekeeping is called a pikadon. The shomer. A shomer is any one of these four guardians. Okay, a renter, a borrower, paid watchman, unpaid watchman. They're all considered the shomer. And shlichus yad, that's what the scenario I described before, where the shomer uses the pikadon without permission, right? The shomer uses the pikadon without permission. Okay, and in that case, essentially he becomes a thief. He becomes a ganav, and the laws change automatically. With all that in mind, you know what? Well, before we move forward, are there any questions? Anyone? You can raise your hand or unmute yourself if you need clarification on any of these points. I know it's a lot. We just kind of blew through straight from the Torah all the way down to the Mishnah, and hopefully we broke it down in a digestible enough way.
Truly?
And, yes, Michael.
Okay. If the item is stolen and you pay the restitution, and then the item is recovered, do you get the money back, even if the original item was damaged in any way? In other words, okay, they didn't find the gun right away. You did use it. They found it later on, maybe a week or two later. You've already paid for it. Okay, now it's back. What happens then?
I love where your mind is going, because that's literally the topic that we are going to study today. Like, you couldn't have been more on target. Like, I'm almost suspecting that you did some prep on this class. Okay. Like, you went through the textbook earlier, and because the question is so on target. Yes, it's a great question. What happens after the fact? And in short answer is the guardian, after paying restitution to the owner of the object, now becomes the owner of the object, for good and for bad. It means if it's recovered later, the object belongs to him. And for good, I say, because the thief needs to pay the principal, remember? He needs to pay back the principal times 2. Who gets the principal times 2? It's 100% return on investment. The original owner or the watchman? Michael, any guess?
It was the watchman that gets the return on investment.
Yep.
But that circumvents what you just said before. Okay, you have an automobile that I really want, and I can't get it anymore. They don't make it, whatever it is. Okay, so it's stolen, and the police recover it in New Jersey somewhere, and it comes back. Now I have that car I actually wanted, and someone's going to pay me for it too. Is that right?
I mean, if there's a way to ascertain that you engineered that whole thing, you hired a friend to steal it and show up a few weeks later, driving back to town in that classic, what's that car that you're talking about, Michael?
Oh,
you have one in
Lamborghini or something, whatever it is.
Lamborghini.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a classic car. Okay. If there's a way to ascertain that you had engineered that sequence of events, I think the law would be different. But in this situation, especially the situation we're going to describe in our Mishnah, where you were not liable to pay, but opted to pay rather than take an oath and be off the hook, we have enough trust that you're not acting in bad faith. Obviously, there's no way to deal with all bad actors, right? There's always a way to outsmart the system. The oath that the rabbis enacted was for your run-of-the-mill case of a potential what's the word I'm looking for? Potential way to circumvent the law and gain possession of somebody else's property. The run-of-the-mill case would be rent it from them and then claim that it's stolen. And as long you take an oath is not nothing. An oath, and a biblical oath, is a very, very serious thing. So much so that people would often opt to pay rather than take the oath, just in case they're not 100% sure of their claim. So I know we think of an oath as like some words that you say, right? But in Talmudic terms, an oath is a very, very powerful thing. I mean, it's like one of the Ten Commandments. So when an oath is demanded from someone in court, it really, you really need them to feel confident enough to, to lay their hand on the Torah or actually hold the Sefer Torah, and take that oath. So yeah, and the rabbis, an interesting thing when it comes to the laws of oaths, the rabbis can't always institute an oath, out of the blue, from scratch, so to say. It's most of the time it's when there's an oath already happening. We have what we describe as Gilgal Shavua. Once you're holding the Torah and taking an oath to verify your claim, well, then swear this also. Just throw it in there once you're already taken the oath. But yeah, it's no simple matter, and the scenario that you mentioned could be something that we discuss further in the Gemara, or maybe we'll shed some more light on it further in the Gemara. For now, let's forge ahead into the Mishnah and the Gemara that we're going to study today. Where are we? Share. Okay. Bava Metzia, 33b. I'm going to read it from the Gemara itself. If you want to follow along with the translation in your textbook, that's quite all right. This is my comfort zone up here on the screen. Okay, Hamafkid. So this is the beginning of a chapter in the Talmud. Will usually have a page break with a beautiful little saying, Hadron Allah Elu Mitzias, which means we'll be back. Elu Mitzias. Elu Mitzias is the previous chapter. And it's kind of like Elu Mitzias has a personality. It's a subject matter that we studied and we've developed a respect for, and we promise to be back to re-examine and to review. For today, we're moving forward, not backwards. So, Hamafkid, right? Remember the word pikadon, pei, kuf, dalid. That's the Hebrew root for deposit. Hamafkid etzel chavero, someone who deposits an object with his friend. Behema okelim, a animal or a vessel. V'nignevu oisha avdu, and they were stolen or lost. So stolen or lost, that's the category of preventable, not negligence. So they come to court, right? I'm going to read between the lines here. They come to court, and the owner of the object tells the guardian, I entrusted it with you for safekeeping. What saith you? He says, it was stolen from my possession. So the court says, you're not liable to pay, right? In this case of the Mishnah, we'll see here clearly, he was an unpaid watchman. Okay? So you're not liable to pay, but take an oath to verify your claim. And he says, I don't want to take an oath. I'd rather just, pay the $100 and be done with it. So that's what the Mishnah continues, right? Shilem, he paid restitution below Ratzali Shava. He did not want to swear. He did not want to take an oath. Okay? Shehare Amru, right? The author of the Mishnah gives us the source for this idea that he could have sworn. Shehare Amru, we know the law is Shomer Chinam, a unpaid watchman, an unpaid guardian, Nishba B'Yotzei. An unpaid guardian can take an oath and leave, right? He's not liable for restitution if he takes the oath. But in this case, he did not take an oath. Rather, he paid restitution to the owner. Now what happens? Okay? Nimtza Haganov. If the thief is discovered, Mishalem Tashlume Kefel. He needs to pay the double payment. Tavach umachar mishalem tashlume arba'a v'chamisha. Okay, This is one point that I neglected to mention earlier. If a thief steals an object or money, he needs to pay double. If he steals an animal and then slaughters the animal and sells the meat, okay, there's a separate penalty for that, which is 4 or 5 times the principal, cost of the animal, as a separate penalty for stealing and selling an animal specifically. Four times the principal for certain types of animals, 5 times the principal for other types of animals. You're going to pay one or the other, either 4 times or 5 times. So when the thief is found, depending on the case, he's going to pay one of 3 penalty payments. He's going to pay either double, 4 times, or 5 times. Okay? Lemi mishalem. Who does he pay those penalty payments to? Lemi shapikadon etzlo. The Mishnah says he pays it to the one who the object was entrusted in, meaning the one who essentially bought the pikadon, right, by paying restitution for it. Nishba, if, however, he took the oath, v'lo ratzah l'shalem, and did not want to pay restitution, nimsa haganov, when the thief is found, mishalem tashlum kefel, tavachu machar, mishalem tashlum arba v'chamisha, the thief will pay double, or if it was an animal that he slaughtered and sold, he'd pay 4 or 5 times the principal. Lemi mishalem, the Mishnah asks, to who does he pay this penalty payment? Lebal hapikadon, to the original owner of the object. Clear so far? Okay, let's look at Rashi. Okay, Rashi, like I mentioned, is always going to be on the inside column of the leaf. So we're looking at the back of the leaf. So the Rashi this time is on the left side, not on the right side. And Rashi goes all the way down the left side and curls under the bottom. And here you have the page break in Rashi for the new chapter. And Hamafkid, okay? V'lo ratzah lishava. Rashi comments on the beginning of the Mishnah where it says the guardian did not want to take an oath. Which oath did not want to take? Shavuas Hashomrim, the oath that guardians take. Shaloi Pashaba, that he was not negligent with it, meaning that it was indeed stolen. Vishaloi Shilach Yad, and that he did not misappropriate its youth. Shahayayacha Lipoter Bishvuazu, because he could have been let off the hook by taking this oath. As the Mishnah continues, Shahare Amru, etc. So Rashi kind of inserts that for you, the background with regard to that oath, what that oath would be that he would be required to take, and what he would gain by taking that oath. Lemi shapikadon etzlo. This is in the case where he did not take the oath and paid restitution instead. He collects the penalty payment from the thief. The kevan deshilem, once he paid restitution, kol tashlumeha, he acquired the object and all future payments associated with that object. Okay, in this case, the penalty payments. The Gemara will get deeper into the reason for this. So that's the Mishnah. That's Rashi on the Mishnah. Let's look at Tosafot for a second. This Tosafos are not very complicated, a little less involved, but give you additional perspectives into the meaning of the Mishnah and the case scenario that we're discussing now. Again, Tosafos is on the right side, right after the page break. Hamafkid. So the Tosafos is bothered by an issue with the Mishnah, which is the Mishnah is talking about an object that was stolen, right? For the purposes of our discussion, it's not necessary to tell me that we're talking about an object that was entrusted for safekeeping and was stolen or lost. Right? We don't talk about what happens if it gets lost. The entire rest of the Mishnah only speaks about various details in the scenario where it was stolen. So Tosfos says, Hamafkid is de lo garsi. There are those who don't actually include oisha avdu. They don't include those words, or it was lost in the text of the Mishnah because it's out of place. It seems irrelevant. Mishum de be'aveda leka kefel. If the object was lost, there are no penalty payments. There are no future payments associated with this object to take into account. And that is the subject matter that we're discussing here. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the author of the Mishnah, is conveying a set of laws right here with regard to what to do with regard to future payments associated with an object that was stolen. Lost objects are irrelevant over here. Tosfos says, obviously the version of the Mishnah we have in front of us includes this word. And he says, Yeshli Yashe, we can put it, i.e., we can answer the reason why this word was included here by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Shekach toen hanifkad. The guardian, these are the guardian's words. It was stolen or lost, right? He doesn't know specifically that it was stolen, right? There's no evidence that it was stolen. He says it's gone, okay? It was stolen or it was lost. I don't know, but I took good care of it. That's all I'm saying, okay? Ve'achar kach nimsa haganov, and then after the fact, the thief is found. So that's, Tosfos says it's not such a difficult question of, why is the case scenario is where it got lost is included in the Mishnah, because it's not included in the Mishnah for the sake of expounding the laws of the case where it got lost. Rather, it's just the words of the guardian when he comes to court. It was stolen or lost. Inami, another possible answer, to this question. Anu yoidim shenignavu mitech beisai. We know that it was stolen, right? Police came, fingerprints, whatever, right? So we know that there was a theft here. Ach ein anu yoidim im pasha oy sha'avdu. We don't know if it was his negligence or it was truly, lost, i.e., beyond his control, lost beyond his control. We know that it left his possession. We don't know if it was stolen, like from a safe, or it was, left on the windowsill, like completely, left out, hung out to dry, or just, left for the taking. So the distinction between being stolen or lost is referring to the court's confusion about what happened here, right? And in that case, it would be up to the watchman based on what he claims. If he said, in truth, I was negligent, well, then he'd have to pay restitution. But if he says it was stolen from a safe or, stolen from behind a locked closet door, then obviously he would not have to pay. So that's the first Tosafot, kind of addressing what we call a diuk, which is being exacting in the words of the Mishnah, right? Trying to be as precise as possible. As we discussed in the intro to the Talmud course, the Mishnah was designed to be as precise as possible, and anytime it kind of strays from that, it kind of raises a red flag, like, what is going on here? Is this coming to teach me something else that I'm ignoring or not? Nignavu, Tosfos on the word vinignavu, and it was stolen. So they come to court, and he claims it was stolen from my possession. Michael, this kind of addresses what you were saying before, kind of expands the cases in which he would collect the future payments. Hu hadin, Tosfos says, the same laws of our Mishnah would apply im Amar if he claimed pashati, I was negligent. sha'kefel shalo, that the double payment, the double penalty payment would belong to him. Kida amar b'gemara migu di boy potar nashe b'geneva. We discussed this. Let me just first I'll translate and then we'll give the background. Migu di boy potar nashe b'geneva, because he could have gotten himself off the hook by claiming that it was stolen. Okay, so we discussed migu in the last course. Migu is a claim that could be used in court to say, believe me in my claim, because if I wanted to lie, I could have said a better lie. Okay, so this is interesting. It kind of opens up a can of worms with regard to in which case would we say that the double payment belongs to the guardian. So it seems like Tosfos is laying down a framework that we need some kind of verification that he's not a bad actor. So in the case where he says, I don't want to take an oath and get off the hook, I'd rather pay for it, he's going beyond his beyond the line of duty in order to act in good faith. So in that case, he acquires that object and the penalty payment associated with it. Tosfos asks, what if he claimed something else, right? What if he claimed, I was negligent and therefore I am liable to pay, and then goes ahead and pays? Does that change the law, right? So Tosfos gives us, what if? Let me give you a parallel case scenario, and let's try to see if the law applies. Tosfos does this a lot, so bear with me. Our Mishnah speaks about the case where he claims it was stolen and then goes beyond and makes restitution even though he's not obligated. What if he made a claim for which he was liable to pay and then paid restitution, right? What's the difference between them? Maybe the difference between them is these two parallel case scenarios is kind of what Michael was mentioning earlier. When he needs to pay for it, we don't know that he hasn't engineered things so that he's going to pay and then get the object back from somebody else later. I don't know if we're stretching here by trying to fit that into this case scenario, but I think it's definitely valid. So we're going to thank Michael for that, and we're going to hold that thought. Ella orche de milsa nakat. Tosfos says the Mishnah took a more, a regular case. Nignevu shehu regilus litin davar shehu patur. Most often, when someone comes to court about a lost or stolen a deposit that disappeared from their property, they're going to claim something that will get them off the hook. So the claim of nignevu is not necessarily. It could even be that the same law would apply if he claimed that I was negligent, but often, most of the time, people don't come into court saying, "Oh, I was negligent and I need to pay." They'll try to get off the hook. They'll try to say, it was stolen, or something like that. Even if he's going to end up paying, right? He's not going to take an oath and swear falsely. But you don't walk into court, saying, "Here, I owe you money, take it." Come into court and say it was stolen. They say, "Oh, swear to back it up." You say, "Oh, I don't want to swear to back it up. I'd rather pay." That's kind of, I guess, human nature is to go at it that way. V'rivan pirish de masnisin nami hachi pirushai. Rivan, one of the Baalei HaTosafot, one of the Tosafists, he explains that is what our Mishnah is talking about. Hachi pirusha da nifka daimer shenignevu b'pshia. The guardian claims it was stolen because I was negligent. V'leiratza lishava. What does it mean he didn't want to swear? Right? Hainu v'leiratza lishava l'sheker. He did not want to swear falsely that it was stolen without negligence, meaning he comes in and admits negligence. So, two ways Tosfos gives us of looking at the Mishnah. One of them is the Mishnah is talking about a case where it was stolen, and the other one is where the person is essentially claiming that he was negligent with it and therefore is liable to pay. But Tosfos says, regardless, it doesn't make much of a difference because we have the theory of migu. If you come into court and admit that it was lost due to your own negligence, you do have a migu because you could have claimed that it was stolen. So we believe you that you were negligent and you're not acting in bad faith to try to get something that does not belong to you. Because if you wanted to get something that does not belong to you, if you're acting in bad faith, you could have gotten off the hook by claiming that you had that it was stolen from your possession. That Tosfos, at the end there, slightly more complicated. I hope I expressed it clearly. We are at 9:05, so I'm going to stop here, but I will stick around for questions. So if anybody needs any clarification on anything we discussed, we will clarify that now. Any questions?